Now, we're going to get into the nervous system and the special senses. Now, I don't know why they call them the special senses. Does anybody? Because they're special. That's literally the only thing I got. I wrote this lecture, and I thought, I'm going to learn about the nervous system and the special senses. And I thought, there's got to be more than just the ones I know. And there's really not. We got some cool things like magnetosomes. We know up from down, things like that. But it's not really that special. They're the same senses we've been learning about forever. That's true, but that doesn't mean they're really super special. I was thinking about that. It's like if you had daredevil senses, you know, it's like that would be kind of cool. So all of those, that central nervous system is going to sort of accumulate for us at the brain, this thing. And different parts of the brain do different things. It can be divided up roughly into 4 regions. Some of you guys had that very macabre, let's rip apart the cat and see, oh, not cat, don't rip apart cats. Rip apart I used to rip apart cats instead of pigs. In lab, not like for fun. The pig, you guys did it. You wanted to see what its brain was like. So don't judge me. It can be divided into 4 regions. The cerebrum, the cerebellum, the diencephalon, and the brainstem. The cerebrum, which to me is the foldy stuff that's on the top, that's responsible for muscle control. When you first open up a skull, that's the stuff you see. It's going to be responsible for muscle control, learning, emotions a bit, memory and perception, as long as the whole thing, because it extends around the brainstem. The cerebellum, that's the lower foldy bits. This is going to be not the external, but the internal one. This controls balance, learning, remembering, and motor skills. So, hypothetically, if you were to create some sort of virus that creates zombies, you need it to destroy the cerebellum. Balance, remembering things, motor control. You want to keep the diencephalon intact, again, for our zombie-creating virus, because that's apparently where I'm going with this now. The diencephalon is going to be responsible for sensory information, smelling things. Homeostasis, keeping the body in good working order, keeping it so it's well-balanced throughout, and regulating that pituitary gland. And what does the pituitary gland do? It sends out what? Hormones. And what are hormones? Messengers. And then the ever-important brainstem, which is responsible for reflexes, transferring sensory information. It's like a switchboard. It transfers sensory information. And your peripheral vision, breathing, heart rate, any unconscious muscle movements you have, those things that have to keep going even when you're not thinking about them, that's the brainstem. So you've got these 4 parts of the brain, each responsible for different things. Your brain has to exist, or your consciousness exists in 2 states, either aroused or asleep. If you're aroused, you're up, you're moving, you're doing all sorts of stuff. If you're asleep, you're getting external stimuli, but you're not processing them. You're not perceiving them. You guys ever gone to like a slumber party at somebody's place and did something to somebody? If you've done that, you are doing something to them. They should be able to feel it. But they're not, and they do feel it, but they're not processing it. And there's a few things. One of the things was put their hand in warm water. Do you know that one? Makes them pee, right? So you put their hand in warm water, their brain's not processing it, but they're having that automatic reaction in the other direction.
I've done the whole
Whipped cream in their hand and make them do that, but they can't feel it. They're not perceiving it. Take it back. They are feeling it, they're not perceiving it. There's a difference. The signal's going to the brain's not doing a job of processing it. Now, sleep is still an active state. It's not like everything shuts down. It's not like powering down your computer. Your brain is still working during sleep. Oh, God, you guys know that, don't you? You guys, especially right before you go to sleep, then apparently your brain kicks into overdrive. That's where it's like, Oh, you got to talk. You got to think. Sleep is a very active state. You dream. And when you dream, your brain is still working. That's what's causing those things to happen. Some mammal species, especially aquatic ones, have developed an adaptation whereas only half of their brain sleeps at a time. Dolphins do this. Half of their brain is asleep, the other half is awake. Why? Because they still need to freaking breathe. And it's not like they just sleep on the surface. They keep swimming while half is asleep and half's not. The state of arousal and the state of sleep are controlled by the biological clock. We do have one. It tells you pretty much, it runs your day. Do you set your alarm to get up in the morning? If you leave your alarm off, do you always sleep through it? Sometimes, sometimes not, but you're still waking up at roughly the same time. No, not at all. Really? So, that's special. For me at least, I know my wife's alarm goes off at 6 every morning. And my body gets up at like 5:59. You know, right before. Every day. Your clock can be adjusted. It can be set. Okay, we just went through a time change. Did it mess with you? Yes. Because the time change is artificial. Your biological clock was set to, this is the time I go to sleep, this is the time I wake up. But it takes a few days, and after a few days, you reset. Or a few months. Then it's time to change it again. Hey, am I the only person in the room who doesn't actually ever get around to changing the clock in their car? Yeah. Okay, just making sure I'm not the only one. Because it's like, we'll reset every clock in the house, and we get to the car and we look at it and we're like, I can do the math. No, another hour. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is what controls the biological clock. It uses information from the senses to set the timing. Your eyes are receiving light information. That will set your clock. When it's a certain wavelength of light, your clock is set for this is day. When it's not that wavelength, it's night. This is what messes with people when they're using their cell phones right before bed. Because the light from the cell phone is different than the light from a light. It's different from the light reflected off a book. It's harder to fall asleep if you use a cell phone right before bed. Because your clock keeps saying, it's daytime. It's time to be aroused and awake. Use other senses, though. If you're blind, you still can detect, you have routines. Heck, you guys probably wake up and you have a routine you go through. When you wake up, eventually you get hungry, and you get hungry at roughly the same time. Typically, your body undergoes bowel movements at roughly the same time each day. It's all controlled by this clock. And then we have emotions. They're controlled by the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the thalamus. All of these are located right around the brainstem. These three work together to create emotions, and those emotions lead to biological reactions. And those reactions are there for a reason. They're important. Emotions are there to help us survive. If you remember something frightening, neurons begin to fire. And those neurons control muscle movements. They might lead to a quickening heart rate. Memories of fear, you're usually scared of something for a reason, so your body uses those memories in order to prep very quickly for flight or for fighting. The amygdala controls that. Creating memories is important for us. It's important for most organisms because those memories allow us if we survive, to use those experiences to prepare for future endeavors. It lets us survive through fear. If you're scared of something, your heart rate goes up, you're more likely to flee. Or you might attack, but only if you know you can win. You have to make those decisions. Memory helps with that. Food. Food's important. You got to know where the food is, how to make the food. If you don't know those things, if you don't have memories of those, then you don't get to eat and you die. Mating. You've got to figure out where you went wrong all those times so that eventually it can work. All of these then get associated with emotional triggers. There are some foods that you eat and you're like, this is wonderful. It gives you a pleasurable feeling. That's a positive memory. That allows you to, it reinforces that you should eat this again in the future. Needs to help your body prepare faster for future events. Now the brain has to, it creates these memories, but the brain also functions much like a child would. It needs rewards in order to move forward. Typically you don't want to punish your own brain, but you can give yourself a reward. And the reward the brain gives itself is dopamine. Dopamine makes the brain feel really, really good. When you do something that enhances survival, you eat, you mate, you feel good. That good feeling is caused because that dopamine gets sent to the prefrontal cortex. You guys have won something before, right? That felt really good. You wanted to win more things. Why? Because when you won, that dopamine got sent to the front and your brain's like, that's awesome, I want to feel this way again. So you try again, and you get another reward. With mating, it feels good. Why does it feel good? It feels good because that's going to help you survive. You want to do it again, and then you want to do it again. You keep getting that dopamine sent to the front. Unfortunately, this leads to addiction. Yes, you can't. You've heard of people being addicted to thrills. It's absolutely possible. If there's, I actually just read a book about it. There are certain receptors in people who have thrill-seeking tendencies where they are addicted to the dopamine that their brain is producing. So they have to do bigger and bigger and bigger thrills to keep up that high. Drug addiction is usually caused by long-lasting changes to the dopamine pathway. So if you continually take drugs, you get that euphoric high, but the problem is the pathway is now altered, so it's going to require greater and greater uptake to keep that high. Or, even worse, it's going to require a steady amount of those drugs to be at that normal level. It's not just that you want the high, you just want to be right back where you started. Yeah? Is it possible to come up with what?
Become addicted to sounds.
Become addicted to silence?
No, sounds. Noise.
Really? I don't know, honestly. If it's producing a pleasure in dopamine, if it's producing dopamine, and you become addicted to that dopamine that you're producing, if you have that genetic mutation, it's possible, but I don't know.